Hey guys, hope you're all well. On this video I will be reviewing the third episode of Amazon Prime's Little Fires Everywhere, and the episode is called Severity Cuts. And I think this is definitely the weakest episode so far, for me anyway. This does feel like a very kind of issue-tastic type episode where they're trying to cram all these potentially big issues in and just not doing it with any real subtlety. It kind of feels like it's becoming that sort of soap opera type thing I was worried about, and there's certainly a middle ground it can get, which I think it did do in the first couple, where it has maybe some of the style of a soap opera and some of the kind of subplots and stuff, but it can still be this very well acted, very more subtle type of soap opera. And I think the problem with this episode is then like one of the big storylines in it is then it's like one of the big school dances. It's it's the homecoming. Sorry, and got the dance wrong. And so a lot of it focuses on a lot of the little dramas going on with the students, with the families, as they get ready for this dance. And unfortunately, a lot of the dramas are just your run-of-the-mill teen type dramas that you've seen in a lot of other shows. And they're just not very interesting. They're just not very captivating. They're very kind of throwaway and disposable. And there's definitely something where they go in for like these sort of button pushing kind of issues and stuff. But it's just not doing it with the subtlety that it requires and with the depth. I don't know. This does make it's sort of interesting, and it's set in the 90s because it does feel a bit like the problem that 90s shows sort of had, where it felt obviously the ones that could do these things effectively, they're the ones that stood out and could you could sort of see them as really being ahead of their time. Obviously, if a modern show, which is this, I know, but it's set in the 90s and feels very 90s. But if a modern show does it, you kind of used to like a modern show tackling these sorts of themes. But I think the problem was in the 90s is that it just felt very unconvincing. It just felt like normally when a show tackled this sort of thing, sort of race issues and these kind of things, then I think a lot of time it just felt like it was doing it to tick a box sort of thing, then it was a token type thing. And it was largely from a white point of view, and they just weren't getting it. And I think this episode at times sort of falls into where it's getting very preachy and where it's kind of box ticking and wanting to show its credentials as tackling these big things, but again, not really achieving what it sets out to. But I'll talk about the school dance last, because the other big storyline in this episode, which was set up in the last episode, of course, is then Babe, or Beb, who works at the restaurant with Mia. She's her baby's like missing. She's lost it, and it was set up in the last episode that Mia's gonna help her find it. So that's a big thing in this episode. And we start with a flashback from 1996, December 96, and it's just showing really Beb struggling to feed a baby, struggling because she doesn't really have enough money to feed it. We see the baby crying a lot, and we see one particularly harsh scene where she goes to like a shop to buy food, and she doesn't have enough money, and but it's really harsh that the woman behind the counter, like Beb's only like 75 cents short, and she won't let her buy it anyway, and she kind of pleads, so I need this to feed my baby, and she's like, well, you know what? Which I shouldn't laugh at, but it's just kind of this like overly brash sort of statement. But it's like, yeah, how about breastfeeding because that's free? And she's really like rude to her, like kicks her out of the shop, like swears at her. It's kind of, yeah, just. But again, it's really hamming this sort of point home. But we see before it cuts to credits, Beb leaves like the baby at the local fire station because she feels she can't cope anymore. She just can't provide for the baby, so she obviously leaves it there where it's safe, but hoping that someone, whoever finds it, it'll end up with a nice family who can provide for it. And I guess part of her thinking is that this is a rich area, so there's a good chance it would go to a family who can provide for it. But that's the setup, and obviously Mia is gonna search for the baby to help Beb in the episode. And it's on the night of the school dance actually, where, well, during the day, Mia is talking to Elena or Ellen. No, it is Elena. I'm be saying Ellen, but yeah, Elena, about this baby, because there's this party which originally they wanted Mia to like do the photography. It's like a friend of like the Richardsons, and it's like this big sort of bash. And originally Mia told Elena, sorry, I can't, I'm working tonight. But then she's talking to her, and Elena mentions then this, I think her name's Donna or something. No, it's the friend. It's the one played by Rosemary DeWitt. I think her name's Donna. It's something like that anyway. That she actually has this baby that she found at a fire station, and I think because I think she mentioned that she's Chinese or something, and yeah, obviously Elena's being quite critical. Why would someone do that to a baby? So Mia sort of puts two and two together and says, well, that's probably Beb's baby. So then she changes her mind about working that night. She says, yeah, actually I don't have to work tonight. So her plan is to go to the party, do the photography obviously as the cover, and try and sneak off and find out if it is actually the baby. So she works the party, and when there's a chance, she like sneaks off upstairs, and it appears to pan out. It looks like it is the baby, and Beb mentions, and there's like a birthmark, and so Mia's pretty sure it is the baby. And actually she's holding it at one point, and it sort of looks like she's maybe going to sneak it out then, but then Elena walks in the room, and Mia kind of has to come up with a cover story with why she's there. But she then sneaks out of the party and goes to Beb and tells her, and Beb's like all excited. And the next sequence sort of confused me because Beb's basically like pleading with, I think, Mia to go and get the baby, and Mia's trying to calm her down and say, we've got to do this properly. And so Beb's kind of getting ahead of herself, and so I got the impression that Mia was maybe going to get the baby for her because this guy drives her, and it's the guy from the restaurant, I think the one who she got to pretend to be the landlord that time. But there's this weird sort of sequence which confused me a bit because he is kind of trying to come on to her because he kind of says, I can tell, I don't know you very well, but I can tell you're quite stressed out. And then he sort of gets flirtatious because he says to Mia, if you ever want to talk to me or kind of hang out, and I can't remember exact words, but de-stress or whatever he says. So he's clearly kind of flirting with her, and it's this weird sort of sequence where they do end up sleeping together, and it cuts back to the party, and it's actually Beb who goes. So I was a bit confused whether Mia was supposed to go to the party, go back and try and get the baby for Beb, or whether she was just driven home by this guy, and then that happened. I wasn't sure. I guess it makes sense that maybe he was just driving her home because it was at the restaurant where she was telling Beb this thing. I think it was anyway. So you got this sort of weird intercut where she's sleeping with this other guy, or this guy, not the other guy. It's not like she's having an affair, but she sleeps with this guy, the guy from the restaurant. And Beb shows up at the party, and it's at this bit where the baby's like in like the like Elena's friend's arms, and it's like, because I think it's his birthday or something, like 1 year old or something like that, or whatever. And so they're gonna feed it like cake or something. And I think this is a good example of just the like over the top melodrama. Because although you can understand Beb being like upset, anxious, she wants to get a baby, I think just the way she screams and stuff, and the way it's a whole like over the top melodrama is just too much. It kind of makes the scene seem really silly rather than actually something that's grounded and really dramatic and effective. So it kind of gets a bit over the top and silly, and they obviously like throw her out, try and restrain her, and there's kind of this cliffhanger type thing where later on the DeWitt character's talking to like Elena, and she's like, what was she even doing here? That's not her baby. Why would she even claim that? And then Elena's like, I don't know, but I'm going to find out, sort of thing. So she's obviously going to try and dig further into this part. And then there could be something where the fact that Mia was like with the baby and stuff, and just some suspicion there, but there's that plot. And then, as I said, that the other big plot is the stuff with the prom, the dance. And this is this. I mean, I wasn't that into the baby stuff, but some of this stuff I thought was even weaker. It, as I said, it is pretty typical teen stuff. It's not very interesting. I did enjoy the fact that there's a 90210 reference. There's sort of quite a good scene where you have Lexi, who's the oldest daughter. Yeah, pretty sure she's the oldest daughter. She has a boyfriend, Brian, over, and he's of course coloured. And I wasn't sure if this was going to be a big deal with the family, but they seem to accept him well enough, and he's over for dinner. But there's this big like argument with Lexi and Brian, and it's sort of a funny scene at first because they're in his car at school, and Lexi is reading this essay out to him. At the same time, she's giving him a hand job. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. Sort of ironic, just these two completely different hats. It's not like she was like having a beer and giving him a hand job. She's reading what appears to be like this really profound like essay, and she's getting a job. But the essay is a big part of the episode because it's this whole thing where it's meant to be about like race relations and stuff, and Brian sees it as very patronizing. And again, this is another of these big issue type moments where obviously her African American boyfriend finds her very snobby, very patronizing towards like the more marginalized sort of race, his like people. But there's this big thing where she seems to admit to Brian that she was inspired by Prell and her upbringing, and her with her single mother. That's what inspired like the essay, and this becomes a big fight with her and Brian during the episode because again he thinks she's being very patronising. And it's almost this idea of something like liberal, like racism, where sort of a privileged white person is enjoying spending time with an African American working class person because they get to say, "Hey, I'm not racist. I'm down with what's going on. I'm progressive," and stuff like that. And I think we sort of see Lexi acting a bit like that in this episode because there's a scene later on where she goes dress shopping with Pal, like for the prom, and she is kind of trying to talk to her on her level, and it's because Pal wants something to wear. And this becomes a whole like bone of contention with Pal and Mia later on. But I think that's an example of the sort of thing this episode's going for. But anyway, there, as I was saying, there is a good 90210 reference because Lexi and Brian are arguing about the prom and about because he's kind of bringing up the issue of sex because he's kind of at that stage where he maybe wants to have sex with her, and he's kind of suggesting then. Yeah, that's what the prom is all about, kind of having sex and that for the first time. And this is then Lexi brings up the 90210 thing because she kind of says, when did Brenda and Dylan have sex? And I'm getting it the wrong way round. It's the homecoming dance. I've done that twice now. So she makes the point, Brenda and Dylan 90210, they have sex for the first time at the prom, or after the prom, obviously, not at the homecoming dance. And again, it's just this really smart sort of reference. Obviously, 90210 would have been on during this time. That was a very current sort of storyline when this is set, and she's obviously right referencing that. So I think some of that pop culture stuff has been really sharp in this series so far. I think this is one episode where it goes a bit overboard with the pop culture references. Actually, there's a lot of talk about Carrie because they're going to obviously the dance. There's numerous reference to like I think it's Pretty in Pink, because that's Moody wants to watch it with Pearl, and there's this whole thing because she wants to go off and do other things. She obviously hangs out with Lexi when they go dress shopping. But there's a lot of pop culture references kind of rammed sort of home. So there's this sort of argument with Brian and Lexi throughout the episode about the whole essay thing. And kind of about the issue of sex, but they do make up by the end and they actually have sex like after the dance and stuff. But there is this whole sort of thing about like almost liberal type racism. There's the other big sort of stuff is with Izzy, actually, because there's like these rumours around school that she's gay, and at like the dinner table scene it's kind of mentioned that kids call her like Ellen, and there is a funny line from Elena actually, because she's out of the loop. I guess this just shows kind of, then she's just not up on this thing, because when it says, why do you think they call her Ellen, Elena's like, because she's really funny, which is a truly funny line actually. But this is another example, I think, bringing up the issue of the daughter being potentially lesbian, which it does seem like they're going down that path, and how the whole idea of dealing with that, and this sort of like culture dealing with it, this more conservative traditional culture. But again, it feels like very on the nose. It feels like the sort of thing that they're not gonna pay the proper time to and really give it the depth it really needs. It does kind of feel a bit stereotypical. But I did like that line from Elena, and actually this is sort of a good episode for Elena in the sense that it actually shows her then she's a good mother. Because she's there for Izzy. She at one point she encourages her to go to the dance, really, because she's kind of probing a bit, kind of getting Izzy to maybe say if the rumours are true that then she is a lesbian. And obviously Izzy is embarrassed and doesn't want to admit it. So Eleanor, that then kind of says, well, why don't you just show them that then it's not true then, kind of in public. And this leads to Izzy asking if she can go to the dance, but in a group with Pearl, Moody, and Moody's friend Carl. And another thing we're seeing in this episode is then Pearl is starting to like withdraw a bit from Moody. Moody, obviously they've been good friends, but he sees them as more than that, and he wants to take the relationship to the next level. And I think Pearl's nervous about that. Maybe she only sees him as a friend. She appears to be pulling away, so I think that's the whole thing. So I think that's one of the reasons she like is up for Izzy going and them going in a group. And I think it's a tactic, to kind of stem that. And I think that's another reason she's nervous about going back and watching the movie with him, like after the dance, the Pretty in Pink. So there's all sorts of like these mini sort of dramas going on, because Pearl seems to be now attracted to Trip, the older brother, the jock. We see that at the end of the dance, because he says, hey, a bunch of us are going back to mine. It's going to be this whole thing where, I can't remember what he says exactly, but there's going to be like beer kegs and stuff. And at first Pearl's kind of like, yeah, I'm up for that, let's do it. But then she's kind of talked out of it when Moody says, I thought we were going to watch the film. So just stuff like that. Pell being attracted to the brother and stuff, and with Moody, it's pretty weak stuff. But as I said, part of the big focus is Izzy, and it's good that we see Elaine as like actually a decent mother, because at one point when Izzy's getting ready for the dance, she like cuts her knee, and when she's like shaving her legs, because obviously she's not used to this, but she dresses up really nice for the dance, and she comes out with sort of blood from the knee, and Elena actually like goes in and helps her get ready, like sort of does the bruise properly, and yeah, it kind of gets her ready and really supportive. So I actually really like them. We see Elena supporting Izzy and as sort of a good mother actually, but the whole thing at the dance with Izzy is that she's showing then she's not a lesbian, then she's kind of normal, and because she like dances and flirts and kisses like Carl, who's like Moody's friend, and that's kind of the whole thing. And Moody actually has a good line where she says, I mean, it's a little where he says sorry. It's a little bit of a cliched speech, but where he basically says, hey, you know, what I like about you is that you don't try to be like everyone else. That's one of your good points. Um, and at the same time, like Elena hears at the party, then this rumor about Izzy and this other girl. So obviously the drama's going to continue, but the episode actually ends with Izzy going to Miz. Miz actually waiting for Pal to come home. There's actually been a big fight with them in this second episode in a row, because Mia finds out then Pal has been clothes shopping with Lexi, and that Lexi brought her the dress. And there's this whole thing because again Mia's very conscious about how you're gonna let these privileged white people tell you how to dress, how to act. You're gonna almost conscious is gonna become one of them. And there's this whole thing about Pal wanting to know where she comes from, and it's something which Lexi says which kind of triggers that. So that's going to be something where, because her mother's never told her about her father and exactly what happened there, so that's going to be a big issue. But the actual episode ends with Izzy showing up at Mia's, and she actually like invites her in, and we see the two households. But that's the episode 3 of Little Fires Everywhere. So not as impressed this week. Hopefully it might get back on track in the 4th episode. But I'll be back with a review of episode 4 pretty soon. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe. You can contact me on Twitter at Keith Beard if you want any questions or any suggestions for future channel content. But I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.